Hello and welcome to the Hypertrophy Odyssey, chapter 323. It is the third day of the week, aka the Spirit Bomb workout. I'm feeling pretty good right now. Very excited for this workout. But anyways, to the main subject matter for today, which is a continuation of the previous subject matter right here. Is it worth doing it the right way? Now this version is going to be called, well, part 2, but steroids edition. But basically, we're going to look again at the question of, is it worth doing it right? Because in the last episode, I was very against doing it I was very much against doing it in the right way, because realistically, you get fucked over sometimes. But that is when you're going against a system. And I think that that's one thing that I've learned recently in thinking about this, is when breaking it down, it is in three parts really. But the first part is against the world, really, against the system, the mechanisms that are set up in place to either accelerate you into a better life or into a worse life, depending, of course, and how you can take advantage of it, of course. So that is the versus the system. This one is versus yourself. So this is the main crux of today's episode, is basically looking at, is it worth just saying fuck it and popping a couple roids and calling it a day, shortcutting myself into the upper echelon of or at least a manageable, or more social media friendly physique. There you go. That's the better way to describe it. And or to my goal body or whatever. That's the way to think of it. And I personally find that it's interesting thinking of it, because I felt very boldly in one sense of the direction, but in the other sense, like this one, no, I don't want to do steroids. I want to do it the right way. I want to do it naturally. I want to do it with using my own terms. And I think looking at the two in two different aspects are very different. Why do I want to not do steroids? Well, I personally know a lot of the downsides to them, which we'll talk about and all that other stuff. But the entire setup for this video is the idea that the self, when it comes to the self, if you are having a dilemma where you want to do something that is for you, you have to decide your personal moralities amongst these things. You cannot be privy to the whims of the other, and or whoever you describe as the other. And I think that that's the main thing about it. Do I want to do this the right way? Which is, the right way is to just do it naturally until I die, basically. Which is a yes. Why? Because realistically, doing the opposite way of taking roids and doing all of those consequences will go against a lot of the things that I personally stand for. And I think that that's part of the entire cake here, is that many people are very weak-willed when it comes to things like this. Their morality is temperamental, based upon how they are feeling and or certain aspects of their life. And I feel like that establishing whatever your moral code is in life is a very important feature to why or why not you would do something like this. So we're going to talk about that, my personal experience with that, and how I feel about it, because of course this is more about me and my view upon the world here. This isn't necessarily based upon you. Will I judge you if you are for or against me? Of course, because we all judge no matter who we are. And if you don't, you are a liar. So thank you very much. But the main thing about it is that this is how I see this as, and I would like to talk about it and see if others agree or disagree, because that is the main thing about the internet, right? That you want to try to have a conversation out there with other people. So we're going to be looking at that and the moralities, in which case why you would and wouldn't do it. So with that being said, though, I will see you at Mother Base. All right, so start this day off with AD press. But anyways, back to the main subject matter for today. Is it worth doing it the right way? Part 2. So the main reason why I wanted to discuss this today is because, unlike the previous episode, which was about
the fact that is it doing it the right, is it worth doing the right way, man versus the system. This is more man versus the self. And this is where I would say my personal morality comes into play in how I see it visually and why I would never do steroids. Because in my mind, there is a spectrum between good and evil when it comes to doing something like steroids. Because in my thinking of it, it is as seen as a evil, not only because of the negative consequences that it would have on my health and the years that it would shave off, and for possibly not 100% worth the risk that is involved with it. God knows any other side effects that it would have, acne and changing of temperance, all the other things that go on the bad side, leathery skin, all that stuff. Besides that, because it's already going to be bad and it might not even be worth it. But I find it morally irreprehensible in order to do something that is in theory just for the self, in order to elevate what is quote unquote my own personal viewpoint of myself, because it seems pointless. Because at the end of the day, without the drugs, I'm not getting anywhere. I'm not going to have or maintain what I gain from it. So there's absolutely no point in going all the way to this extreme, to the point where my life is shortened because of it. So it seems as though it is not a evil that is worth doing, but I find it also as well as an evil, because I find it that internally it is something that is a shortcut, and because of the fact that it's a shortcut, I do not respect it personally. Now, this is completely different than something like a system where you have to take advantage of shortcuts because the system will fuck you if you don't. This is an internal battle where I don't have to listen to anybody else except for myself. And in this case, I find shortcuts morally irreprehensible. They are evil. They do not coincide with the fundamental ideals of what going to the gym consistently should be doing for you. So doing something like this, like doing something like steroids, would make absolutely zero sense and would go against my moral code. Now, of course, people will do it and I don't necessarily care, but also at the same time, I will judge you for it, because then your moral code is kind of shit in comparison, because you cannot follow it. Now, of course, there are reasons why people will do it, but I'm also not gonna really listen to them, because the realistic number of people that would make sense for to do it are very, very, very minuscule at best. And we're not even talking about the people who are already on it. So it's very, very small. And the judgment comes from the fact that because you don't have a moral system, whether it's good or bad, and realizing that you're following it, you're not following your own moral system, I am going to lead to believe that you are not a good person. Now, is this a little bit too much of a jump? Probably, but also at the same time, I am going to say you would have to show me other things in your world view that would let me establish this, because it's not necessarily a good thing. I don't think there are many people out there that would say, oh, he's a good guy druggie. I don't think that those two things can ever really coincide. So it's a similar idea. You're shortcutting a way in order to get ahead. And of course, this is internally. If it's externalized into something else, that makes it completely different. If it was externalized, then I could possibly see the extent as to why drugs are being used, and I could see how it could be a necessary evil. But that's the thing, it's still evil regardless of whether or not you want to believe it is or isn't. Now, of course, that's just how I am, and that's how I see my personal struggle between the man and self, because that's how I have dealt with things. I do not feel like I need to do steroids. There's absolutely 0 point, and defeats the purpose. I will never do it. There's absolutely no point in me doing it.
And we're back. Welcome to the workout debriefing. Exercises not filmed, none. Exercises skipped, also none. Got everything in, thankfully. But anyways, back to the main subject matter at hand here. Is it worth doing it right? Steroids edition. So the main reason why I wanted to discuss this is because I feel like this is a subject matter that I occasionally talk upon in this channel. I will probably go into the problems of the fitness industry and maybe more towards the bodybuilding scene of the industry and all that other stuff, and talk about that some other day, but I wanted to discuss the idea of steroids in here before that, because I want to establish the idea that I'd probably never really do it for a multitude of reasons, which I've probably already explained beforehand. But to reiterate it all, basically, it would go against what I would see as morally correct in my terms, in my morality, because I don't think it shifts. I think once you have it established, it's good to go. I think that a lot of people end up shifting their morality based on what pleasures them now, because they realistically never learned to establish whatever they have as a morality. So thus, they are more willing to do whatever is needed for their perceptive mind in order to get ahead and or pleasure themselves in whatever way they can. And I know that sounds strange and or weird and or something along those lines, but realistically, out of the people that actually do steroids for any actual purposes that are for, let's say, bodybuilding and for actual notoriety, it is a very, 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 very small percentage of people who actually have good reasoning to make the sacrifice for doing it. It is a very, very low percentage chance. A majority of the people that end up doing it are realistically not going to get there and or do that. So thus they are either doing it for the inflation of the ego, so then they can see the self in a better light, even though in reality they're always chasing the purple dragon, because that's how it always ends up. Or realistically, they get absolutely nothing, and then they get dog water. They have a dog water reaction, so they have none of the benefits and all of the minuses, because of course their body just couldn't handle it. So you get a bunch of these things where you get the two options that kind of, you either do it, you go to the dark side, or you don't. And I think that going to it is just an idiotic move for a lot of people. I would say probably 99.99999% of the people who do it. Now, there is that 0.0001 that probably makes sense, but also those are the people that realistically I don't really care to talk about. Realistically, they're in their own head, and or they're doing it for money, but even then, the money in this industry that people like to try to get into is horrible. Let's be real here. You'd probably make more money doing influencing rather than doing any type of bodybuilding. Now, of course, they can go simultaneously, but at the same time, you can get big on the internet without the necessary need to do other shit like that, and thus having to expose yourself to the people on the internet that will forever criticize you for staying the same and or have unrealistic expectations for you, and the mill of always having to compare yourself over and over and over again to not only yourself but to your harshest critics, because people are very harsh. It is something that I feel like tricks a lot of younger kids nowadays, because now they end up doing it so young, but realistically they haven't even established what the hell their own good or bad is in their own life, and thus they are kind of lost, and it kind of breaks the idea of it in general. I think that a lot of people don't realize that probably it has to do with their own morality of whether or not to do it or not to do it, but then they don't necessarily ever establish it, because realistically we learn good and evil on this, but we learn a societal good and evil. We don't learn what is good to us or bad for us. We don't learn that as much as we have to figure that part on our own, as we have to figure out a philosophy that we establish our life against, whether you believe in the will to power or something else along those lines, or something else completely different. You know, you can go many routes, but a lot of people do not establish anything like that when they're younger, and thus they go down the rabbit hole that is steroids and or other harmful chemicals to put in their body, and then they never really understand why they never really establish themselves, or can never really be content with where they are, because realistically they never found what was the limits of their own mind. So they are kind of drifting and fucked. And that's it. That's really it. I mean, if you want to do it, do it. For all I care, I don't give a shit. It's your life. But at the same time, don't influence others to do your stupid shit because you don't know what is good or evil in your mind. It's quite frustrating to see people trying to influence others to do it because realistically, it isn't your place to decide whether somebody does it or not. You should only be giving your opinion about what you do on the internet, and that's about it. Anything else is superfluous. Even videos like this is just me giving my opinion about how I feel about things. I'm not telling anybody what to do, but it would be retarded of me to say that don't stay natural and do that other stuff because realistically, who gives a fuck? You're going to, if you have an established personality of who you are and know who you are, then it doesn't matter. But if you don't know who you are, then of course you're going to listen to some random fuck on the internet. And of course you're going to listen to anybody who might have some modicum of whatever you might think that you want. And it's interesting, and that's probably one of the issues with a lot of things nowadays is because a lot of people end up lost, and unbeknownst to them, it's because they have nothing to grasp upon, because they never really established what the hell their mindset is, whether it be good and or bad, and whatever it is and wherever you land on it. You never decided, you never figured it out, and unfortunately nobody ever told you, and then you're fucking left drifting, hoping to God that you can chase pleasures in whatever you can. But that's a kind of a different subject for a different day. And with that being said, tell me what you think in the comment section down below. I'd love to know your thoughts and opinions about this one. This one was more very particular about one subject matter, and we will come back to that subject matter a lot probably on the channel as time progresses. But thank you very much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Please share this video with anybody who may or may not like it. I will be back on tomorrow with a new video. Thank you very much for watching. Tomorrow we will be back with another one. You'll see what I mean by part 3. I will see you in the next one. Keep it heavy. Stay safe out there. Stay cool. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace.